Having refused to bow to the politics of fear, hatred and division, London is a city embarking on a new journey after voting in its first ever Muslim mayor. Sadiq Khan is spending his first week on the job after winning the biggest personal mandate of any politician in British history, despite his opponents trying to paint him as a dangerous extremist. His victory takes on global significance at this time of religious and racial division and outright Islamophobia around Europe and in the United States. Indeed, when I met him at City Hall for his first international television interview, he showed that he's not shy about speaking up for tolerance and speaking out against fear and loathing on the US campaign trail, confronting the Trump effect head on. Mayor Khan, welcome to the program.
It's great to be here, really.
You know, you are trending all over the world. Your election has grabbed headlines and attention everywhere. More seriously, because the Islamic factor, the Muslim factor, has been a big factor. Are you surprised about that? And what is your take on that?
You know, my view is, I mean, I'm born and raised in London. This is my city. In 2016, we're global citizens. We have multiple identities. So I'm a Londoner, I'm British, I'm European, I'm a father, I'm a dad. I'm of Islamic faith. I'm of Asian origin, of Pakistani heritage. And so no one thing defines who we are. But in the current climate, with the sort of election the Conservative Party chose to have, I think the result last Thursday is a huge vindication for what a wonderful city London is. But also that, you know, Western liberal values are compatible with mainstream Islam. And, you know, last Thursday we had a record turnout, a record vote that we secured for me. And I think that shows, actually, you know, that people do care about these things. They understand that you can be a Muslim and be Western, you can be a Muslim and be British. You can be both. And so, obviously, I'm chuffed and I'm proud and I'm pleased and stuff, but, you know, now begins the job of actually delivering as the Mayor of London.
But already you have engaged in a war of words with Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been very divisive and, as you have said, has played the fear and anger card in his election, like you've described, your Tory opponent for mayor. Tell me what you feel about the whole idea of banning Muslims from the United States. You presumably would not be able to visit.
Well, look, you know, people understandably have fears. Now, there's two ways of dealing with that. One is you play on people's fears, or two is you address them. And I think the Conservative Party here used the Donald Trump playbook when it came to the election. It was obvious that I'm a Muslim. You can tell that from my name, and I've never hidden the fact that I'm a Muslim. And to try and seek to divide communities, to try and give the impression that somehow our city may be less safe if I was the mayor, I think that was rejected last week. And the point I made last week during my acceptance speech was, you know, London has chosen hope over fear. I'm really proud that London chose unity over division. And my message to Donald Trump and his team is that, you know, your views of Islam are ignorant. It is possible to be a Muslim and to live in the West. It is possible to be a Muslim and to love America. I've got family members who are American. We've often been to America on holiday. My kids used to love Disneyland. I'm scared of some of the rides, but they used to love going to Disneyland. We still love going there. I've been there as a minister. I'm not exceptional. So for Donald Trump to say, oh, Mayor Khan can be allowed, but not the rest, is ridiculous, because there are business people here who want to do business in America who happen to be Muslim. There are young people here who want to study in America who happen to be Muslim. There are people here who want to go to holiday in America who happen to be Muslim, and around the world. Now, by giving the impression that Islam and the West are incompatible, you're playing into the hands of the extremists.
You've said that you actually want to do business and go and learn from and exchange ideas with mayors of great American cities, like in New York or in Chicago. Would you go under a Donald Trump presidency?
Well, look, I mean, I'm not sure if he'll allow me to go, because I may have members of my entourage who are Muslim. But the point is, it's not just about me. It's about the message it sends from, you know, the greatest country in the world. I mean, what is the story of America? And I think, you know, I think Donald Trump doesn't get the history of America. And my point with respect to, you know, Americans is, look, you know, I think, you know, you've got a choice when it comes to the elections in November. You've got a choice of hope over fear. You've got a choice of unity over division. You've got a choice of somebody who's trying to divide not just your communities in America, but divide America from the rest of the world. And I think that's, not the America that I know and love. And, look, I'll do, of course I'll go to America because, I love the country. But also I think, New York and Chicago and Austin and other parts of America have a lot to teach this city. How do we address the issue of climate change? How do we fix air quality? How do we do integration better? How do we keep our cities safe in policing? So, of course, I'll travel to America, but I'm hoping that, that he's not the guy that wins.
In fact, you've called yourself a feminist, and you'd like to perhaps see a female president in the United States.
Look, not only does Hillary have a fantastic track record, and she's very, very experienced, I'm the father of 2 daughters. I'm a proud feminist in City Hall. Just imagine the message it sends to my daughters and to girls around the world that the President of the United States of America is a woman. Not any old woman, a woman with the gravitas, with the experience, somebody who's a unifier leading the USA, and she'll be an inspiration. She'll be an inspiration. And, I'm quite clear in my mind who I want to be the president of the USA.
Obviously, we're in a really difficult state right now. We see divisions across Europe. We see terrorism committed by extremist Muslims. We see 800 British Muslims have gone from this comfortable country to join ISIS. What do you think you can do? What do you think your significance is as the first Muslim mayor of London and a prominent Muslim politician to try to address this issue, and how do you think you could do it?
Do you know, one of the really troubling things over the last decade and a half is if you look at 9/11, these were foreigners ostensibly coming in from outside to destroy our way of life. What 7/7, the bombings in London in 2005 showed us, also the atrocities in Paris and Brussels, is these people who try and kill us, maim us, terrorize us, are born and raised here. And so we've got to have a plan how we address extremism, how we address radicalization, how we keep our cities and our countries and our people safe. If it is the case that people have no sense of belonging, we've got to give it to them. And by the way, I'm not excusing terrorism or criminality. We've got to make sure people integrate better. We've got to promote positive role models. When the nihilistic preachers of hate come along and say, you know what, this country hates you because you're a Muslim. You know what, all the problems around the world are caused by Western foreign policy. You know what, the reason you haven't got a job is because you're a Muslim. You know what, the reason why you're in overcrowded housing is because you're a Muslim. You want young people to have the resilience to say, you're talking rubbish. Some of my best friends are Jews, are Christians, are Hindus. They don't hate us. I break bread with them. I work for one. Actually, when you say they hate us, what about that successful journalist who's a Muslim? What about that successful doctor? Dare I say it? What about the mayor of London who's a Muslim? And we've got to teach resilience to our youngsters. We've got to make sure, look, prisons can't be places where people who are radicalize others. We've got to make sure we de-radicalize people who believe that this nihilistic way is success in this world and the hereafter. And I'll tell you this again, the President of the United States of America saying Muslims are not allowed is not the way to do that.
I read that when you were a minister, one of your positions meant that you had to be sworn in by the Queen, and Buckingham Palace called you and asked, what Bible would you like to be sworn in on?
Yeah, so I have the privilege of being what's called a Privy Councillor, the Queen's advisors, which means before my names are the words Right Honourable. And so before I went for my swearing-in ceremony, I had a phone call from the palace. And there, as you know, there are various versions of the Bible. And they asked me which version I'd like to use, and I said, a Muslim version, please. And they didn't get the joke. And I asked for a Quran, and they didn't have one. And they asked if I could bring mine along with me, which I did, not a problem at all. And it was one of the, a day I'll never forget. You kiss the Queen's hand, and you swear the oath, and you become a Privy Councillor. But as I was leaving, the palace returned my Quran, and I said, you know what, keep it here for the next person. And because I was the first ever Privy Councillor of Islamic faith, and the good news is they kept it there, and a year later another British Muslim became a Privy Councillor, so it was used, it was used, which I'm really pleased about.
On that note, Mayor Sadiq Khan, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.